Hello friends, and welcome to the Forgotten Past. On this channel, you'll explore untold stories, lost events, ancient discoveries, and hidden secrets from across history. Let's view the video. The Battle of Gettysburg, fought in July 1863, stands as one of the most pivotal moments in the American Civil War. It was a brutal clash that marked the turning tide of the war, where strategies, leadership, and courage shaped the future of the United States. Gettysburg's strategic location made it a crossroads of crucial roads in Pennsylvania. Both Confederate and Union armies recognized its value for supply lines and communication, making it an inevitable battleground as the Confederate Army of Northern Virginia advanced northward. General Robert E. Lee aimed to carry the war into Union territory, hoping to relieve Virginia's worn lands and pressure Northern morale. His plan to invade the North was ambitious, targeting a decisive victory to force political negotiation or foreign intervention. The Union Army, under General George G. Meade, quickly moved to intercept Lee's forces. Both sides scrambled to concentrate their scattered troops, aware that the approaching battle could decide the fate of the war and control over the eastern United States. Skirmishes broke out near Gettysburg as scouts and cavalry encountered each other unexpectedly. These early clashes were small but intense, signaling the coming storm. The town itself became a focal point as reinforcements hurried toward the fields and hills surrounding it. Both armies faced logistical challenges. Roads were clogged with men, horses, and artillery. The terrain, featuring ridges and farmland, would play a critical role in the upcoming battle. Commanders studied maps and positioned troops carefully, knowing any mistake could be fatal. By evening on July 1st, thousands of soldiers gathered around Gettysburg. The atmosphere was tense with anticipation. Leaders on both sides prepared their men for the brutal fight ahead, a battle that would become the bloodiest in American history. On the morning of July 1st, 1863, Union cavalry under General John Buford spotted Confederate forces approaching Gettysburg from the west. Recognizing the town's strategic value, Buford chose to delay the enemy long enough for Union infantry to arrive. His men formed a thin but determined defensive line. Confederate General Henry Heth's division led the assault, expecting only minor resistance. Instead, they encountered fierce Union fire on McPherson's Ridge. Buford's cavalry, armed with breech-loading carbines, slowed the advance until reinforcements from the Union I Corps under General Reynolds arrived. General John Reynolds swiftly took command and reinforced Buford's position, but he was struck by a Confederate bullet and killed almost immediately. His death shocked the Union ranks, yet his arrival had stabilized the line long enough to hold back the Southern advance temporarily. As the day progressed, more Confederate troops poured into the fight, including General Richard Ewell's corps from the north. Union forces became stretched thin. By afternoon, they were fighting on multiple fronts, holding positions at Seminary Ridge and beyond, while the Confederates pressed forward with growing intensity. The Union forces, unable to withstand the increasing pressure, began retreating through the town of Gettysburg. Chaos gripped the narrow streets as soldiers were captured or killed. Some Union troops managed to reach Cemetery Hill, south of town, where a new defensive line was forming. General Oliver O. Howard took command of the retreating Union forces and organized them on higher ground. This quick decision to occupy Cemetery Hill proved vital for the following days. The Union now held the high ground, a natural advantage for both defense and visibility over the surrounding terrain. As night fell, over 15,000 men had become casualties. The Confederates had taken the town but failed to secure the heights. Though the first day ended in Union retreat, their control of the high ground would shape the course of the battle to come. July 2, 1863, dawned hot and tense. The Union Army, now fully assembled, held strong defensive positions along Cemetery Ridge, Culp's Hill, and Little Round Top. General Meade anticipated attacks and spent the morning reinforcing his flanks, knowing the Confederate assault could strike from any direction that day. General James Longstreet, under Lee's orders, prepared a massive flanking maneuver to strike the Union left. His corps moved in the afternoon heat, seeking to roll up the Union line Confederate forces marched toward key positions: the Peach Orchard, the Wheat Field, Devil's Den, and ultimately, Little Round Top. Fighting erupted violently at the Peach Orchard and the Wheat Field. The terrain, dotted with stone walls and dense foliage, made control change hands multiple times. Both sides suffered heavy casualties. Smoke choked the fields as regiments charged and countercharged through blood-soaked corn rows and shattered fences. At Devil's Den, brutal close combat turned the rocky outcrop into a death trap. Union and Confederate soldiers fought bayonet to bayonet among boulders. Sharpshooters used the rocks for cover, turning the area into a sniper's nest. Control of Devil's Den seesawed, but eventually fell to the Confederates. The day's turning point came at Little Round Top. The 20th Maine Regiment, led by Colonel Joshua Lawrence Chamberlain, held the extreme left of the Union line. Running low on ammunition, they famously fixed bayonets and charged downhill, repelling a final Confederate assault and saving the Union flank. Meanwhile, on the Union right at Culp's Hill, fierce skirmishes continued. Confederate forces attempted multiple assaults under cover of darkness, but Union soldiers held firm. The rocky, forested terrain and entrenched positions gave the defenders a significant advantage despite relentless pressure throughout the evening. By nightfall, thousands lay dead or wounded. The Confederates had gained some ground, but failed to break the Union line. Union forces still held the crucial high ground, and Lee's hope for a breakthrough had faltered. The battle's second day had ended in fire, blood, and heroic resistance. At dawn on July 3rd, both armies braced for another day of carnage. Skirmishes resumed at Culp's Hill as Union forces counterattacked to reclaim lost ground. After hours of brutal fighting, the Union right flank held firm. Meanwhile, General Lee devised a bold plan for a final decisive assault. Lee believed the Union center on Cemetery Ridge was vulnerable. He ordered General George Pickett, alongside divisions under Pettigrew and Trimble, to lead a massive frontal attack. General Longstreet, who doubted the plan, reluctantly prepared his men for what would become the most infamous charge in Civil War history. Before the assault, the Confederates launched a massive artillery bombardment. Over 150 guns roared across the battlefield. Smoke filled the air as shells pounded Union positions. Yet the bombardment's effectiveness was limited. Much of it overshot the target. Union artillerymen held fire, conserving ammunition for what was coming next. At around 3 p.m., over $12,000 Confederate soldiers emerged from the woods in precise formation. Marching across open fields toward Cemetery Ridge, they faced relentless artillery and musket fire. Men fell in waves. Despite the carnage, many reached the stone wall at the Union center, where savage hand-to-hand combat erupted. The Union line under General Hancock held strong. Reinforcements rushed in to plug gaps. As the Confederates breached the wall at the angle, they were surrounded and driven back. Pickett's division was shattered. Lee's gamble had failed. Less than half of the attackers returned to their lines alive. Lee took full responsibility for the failure, reportedly telling Pickett, "It is all my fault." He expected another Union counterattack, but Meade, cautious and exhausted, chose not to pursue. The Confederate Army, bloodied and demoralized, began preparations to retreat back toward Virginia under cover of darkness. July 3rd ended in decisive Union victory. The failed assault marked the high water mark of the Confederacy. Over 50,000 men had fallen in 3 days. Gettysburg had become the turning point of the Civil War, where Southern dreams of victory died, and the long road to Union triumph truly began. When the guns fell silent on July 3, 1863, the fields around Gettysburg were carpeted with the dead and dying. Over 50,000 men had become casualties in just 3 days. The scale of suffering was unlike anything Americans had seen. Gettysburg became a symbol of war's brutal human cost. Union burial details worked for days, digging shallow graves in the summer heat. Many bodies were never identified. Dead horses rotted in the sun, and the stench of death filled the air. Civilians, including women and children, emerged from hiding to witness the unimaginable devastation on their once quiet town. Local buildings were turned into makeshift hospitals. Homes, barns, and churches overflowed with the wounded. Amputations were performed with rudimentary tools and no anesthesia. Doctors worked day and night, often covered in blood. Nurses, many volunteers, moved between rows of screaming men, trying to offer comfort amid horror. Civilians played a vital role in tending the wounded. Gettysburg women brought food, water, and clean linens. One teenager, Tilly Pierce, became famous for assisting doctors throughout the battle. The town's population had witnessed a tragedy that forever changed their lives and the identity of their community. Thousands of soldiers remained unaccounted for, their bodies buried in unmarked graves or left where they fell. Months later, the Gettysburg National Cemetery was established to properly honor Union dead. The fallen Confederates were buried separately, often reinterred later in Southern cemeteries. The Confederate retreat was slow and painful. Lee's army withdrew under heavy rain, carrying thousands of wounded men in wagons. Union forces, exhausted themselves, did not immediately pursue. Though Meade had won the battle, criticism followed for not finishing Lee's army when he had the chance. Despite the questions, Gettysburg was a clear Union victory. The Confederate invasion of the North had failed, and Southern morale was deeply shaken. The North, by contrast, found renewed determination. Gettysburg marked a turning point, not just militarily, but emotionally and politically, for the fate of the divided nation. The Battle of Gettysburg became more than a military clash. It evolved into a defining moment in American memory. It marked the turning point of the Civil War, halting Confederate momentum. For many, it symbolized the Union's resilience and the immense sacrifice required to preserve a nation torn by conflict. Months after the battle, the Gettysburg National Cemetery was formally dedicated. On November 19, 1863, President Abraham Lincoln delivered his brief but profound Gettysburg Address. In just 272 words, he redefined the war's purpose, a struggle not only for union, but for freedom, equality, and a new birth of liberty. The address transformed Gettysburg into hallowed ground. Lincoln's words elevated the sacrifices made there, casting the war in moral terms. His speech became one of the most enduring pieces of American oratory, memorized by generations and etched into the collective conscience of a nation seeking meaning in suffering. For survivors, Gettysburg never faded. Veterans from both sides returned to the site for decades, attending reunions, building monuments, and preserving memories. In 1913, 50 years after the battle, Union and Confederate soldiers embraced in a moment of reconciliation, symbolizing national healing, though many wounds, especially racial, remained unhealed. Today, the Gettysburg battlefield is one of America's most visited historic sites. Over 1,300 monuments dot the rolling hills, honoring every regiment, commander, and state that fought. It remains a place of reflection, education, and remembrance, where history breathes from the ground and speaks through bronze and stone. Gettysburg also left lasting lessons in military strategy. Historians and soldiers still study its terrain, decisions, and tactics. The battle revealed the costs of misjudgment, the power of terrain, and the human element behind victory and defeat. Its influence reaches far beyond American soil and into global military thought. More than a battle, Gettysburg endures as a symbol of sacrifice, unity, and unfinished promises. It reminds us that the cost of preserving democracy is high and the struggle for equality continuous. In the echoes of cannon fire and Lincoln's voice, Gettysburg calls future generations to remember and to aspire. Thanks for watching The Forgotten Past. If you enjoyed the journey, like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a hidden story or untold truth. New discoveries await. See you in the next video.